to hear that resonance. And when we cut off, and it just, you know, it's indescribable. And their faces are so amazing to watch when they're singing, but especially as a cutoff, and you just hear the reverberation.
I'm here with Cathy and Ron Sutherland, who are alum of the Empire Tour, the Gold Tour. They ran the Empire Tour for 13 years, and both have been a part of AMA for 40 years, including now, still part of AMA. So tell me, just give me a general feeling of how's it been being a part of American Music Abroad?
Well, it totally affected my life. When I retired, I went on the year I retired, June of 96, I went on my first AMA tour. And it was an affirmation of why I retired. That's what I was supposed to do. I didn't know that when I retired, but that gave me something to do and something I really enjoyed and looked forward to and learned so much from it. When I was teaching, I took 2 trips to Europe on our own, done without computers, one in 1976 for the bicentennial, and then one in 1990. We went to Austria and Italy. And had I have known about AMA, I would have asked them to set up everything for me because they know how to do it. They know how to plan trips. And I could have saved time and put 10 more years on my life. But I didn't know about it then.
Right.
And it was such a quality experience that I continued to do it for those 13 tours with the Empire Tour, and then stayed involved in helping to recruit teachers because I believe in the product for kids, what it does for kids. I know what it did for my grandchildren. It altered their lives. And I know what it's done for the many teachers that I've encouraged to come on board. And that makes me feel really good because every time I recruit a teacher, that's X number of kids that come with that teacher because they get more kids to be involved. And I just learned so much about traveling that I wish I had have known when I was teaching before AMA became part of my life. Just things about how to load a bus properly and quickly so you save time, how to unload it, how to do a quick count off, how to communicate, how to take attendance, just things that I learned the AMA way.
It's great. And what about you, Cathy?
You keep hearing the word life changing, but that's the word that we feel that it was life changing for us. But as we talk to past students and even adults who have gone with us, and these are years ago, every time we see them, they bring up AMA. They still talk about those experiences. So I know one of the things you asked about the impact, we know the impact because we have firsthand experience of that from people always wanted to talk about it. It's very exciting.
Do you think the AMA has stayed the same or changed over the last 40, 50 years?
I mean, obviously there's been changes. We have to kind of go along with the times. Kids are a little bit different today, different needs. But I compare it to a great restaurant that people love and go to, and then that restaurant closes or changes ownership. And they change ownership, they don't keep the recipes, and it's not the same restaurant anymore. When AMA changed its ownership, when you took over, you kept all the recipes. You kept the excellence in housing, you kept the excellent venues, the way things were done, and therefore the restaurant is still thriving and people still want to come to it. I think that was the key with the change, was keeping the things that were so excellent and putting in, little improvements here and improvements there. I know how the head directors now communicate in such a great way with the modern technology that can take attendance in minutes, where I did it the old-fashioned way because the kids didn't have cell phones at that time. That grew as we grew with it.
When we think that our tours, the number of years that we went without cell phones, And we were using walkie-talkies from coach to coach. And
Yeah, how did you communicate with the kids on getting up on time? And you probably were doing a lot more running back then.
yes, going knocking on doors if you needed to, and making sure that all your announcements were done at dinner and, on the coach before they got off.
We made sure that the same announcements were done, whether it was two coaches. Usually our tour was two coaches. A couple of times it was three. That I made sure as the head director that whatever I said on coach one was being said on coach two, was being said on coach three. So the students got the same information, the same data on the times, what the wake up time should be, when breakfast was, what curfew was, all the data they needed to know, what the dress would be for the next day, if they needed to bring a AMA t-shirt or if they needed to bring their jackets. We made sure we transferred all that information to them so they got the same, but it was a lot more difficult than it is today with kids just pick up their phone and it's right there. It's
Right. Yes, we have an app for that now.
Yes, but we were talking to Mary Kay, and she goes, they were and saying about the Spot app and everything that it did. And I'm going, oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk to me about the Empire Tour. What was so special about the Empire Tour?
we
Besides you starting it, right?
yeah, we nurtured it, and I believe all the head directors that I dealt with did the same thing. You nurtured it as a family because these kids are away from home. Yes, they're having a marvelous experience musically, historically, culturally, hearing new languages, learning words in different languages. But we had to make sure that we made it a caring environment. And that was, to me, was one of the key factors that we strive to do, to make sure that the environment was, the kids were happy and the kids were healthy, and that we know that we cared about them. We made a big deal of having the kids stand up on the front of the coach, and after they got to know their roommates for a couple of days, and they had to talk about their roommate and tell about where their roommate was from and what they did besides music, what activities they were involved in, what their dog's name was, what their girlfriend's name was, their boyfriend's name, what their parents did. And we found that this created an environment of care, and kids took care of each other. When if we had a kid that was a quiet kid, maybe a little bit of a loner, we made sure that somebody, and without many times without being encouraged by a staff member, other kids would go over and make sure that child stayed in the loop and felt good. And through that, it's like the high school that's run really well. It's all based on how the principal sets it up. And if the principal doesn't set it up well, there could be chaos in that high school. So we made sure the staff were all on the same page, and we gave that off to the kids. And we, as Cathy said, when we see anybody that ever went, be it teacher or students, those students, of course, from those early trips are now in their 40s, and still some of them call us Mr. and Mrs. S. Kids do. They talk about their experience on AMA. It is life altering and it's lifelong.
How many of those students are now directors? And do you know of any of them that are directors on an AMA tour?
Yes, there is one on Long Island, and I just to get myself in the AMA frame of mind, knowing I was going to do this today, I watched clips from the 2011 tour, and one of the kids on that tour, Brendan, somebody.
Brendan Meyer.
Yes.
Brendan Meyer.
He
Yeah.
went in 2011. I just watched that. It's funny you asked that question. I just watched that DVD tonight. And I go back at least twice a year and watch clips out of all the different years. And it brings back just the fondest of memories. We were talking the other night, reading the different questions that were possible. What was the experience that stands out in our mind from the tours? And Cathy and I each she'll share hers, but mine was we were in Dresden and we were doing a concert in that church that was bombed by the American Air Force in February of 1945, and we bombed Dresden to the ground, as everybody knows. And here we are with kids in the cathedral, a church that was put back together so it looked the same. And we ended it with God, let there be peace on earth. And the choir went into the audience, encircled the audience, and the band in the front. So everybody was connected, holding hands and saying, let there be peace on earth. There wasn't a dry eye in the house because these people, these German people, knew that the grandparents or the great grandparents of these children were the ones that bombed the city because they were at war. And now we're at peace with a great ally, and music brought it together. I mean, AMA did that. And on that same concert, we did a great arrangement of Schindler's List that had a flute solo as the main theme. And we had a couple of wonderful flute players where they alternated, so we shared the goodies. And that night, an angelic Asian American child played that haunting melody from Schindler's List, and it just set the tone of care and of love and of war is not good and we need to get along. And that's part of the message that American Music Abroad sent, to get along. That's why we would often give the pilots a note, say, would you welcome the tour? And they always did. Welcome on this flight from American Music Abroad, and for bringing music and friendship and love to Europe and sharing it. To me, that's all part of the AMA message.
Yeah.
It's Bruce, it's interesting that Ron and I, when we were looking at the questions and without knowing what we were each going to say, Dresden was also a memorable experience for me and our students in the choir, because we sang Let Me Be an Instrument of Peace, which the text is St. Francis of Assisi. And just the text, as you know, where there is hatred, let me so love, where there is injury, pardon, and the students were signing some of this too. And they sang from the depths of their hearts. And they were crying. I was crying as a conductor. The audience was crying, because music truly, we know, is an international language that unites, it creates beauty and that emotional connection in the hearts of performers and audiences. And it's so powerful and uplifting. So that was truly one of my memories that I always hold dear in my heart. But then another is just starting the morning. Every morning on the coach, we would have, as soon as the wheels were rolling, we all sang, "Oh, what a beautiful morning." And it was such a great way to start the day. And the whole coach, whether it was band or choir, all sang. And then by the time we kept doing it every day, they were harmonizing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was awesome. And the coach drivers were like, "Oh, what a beautiful way to start the day."
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, culturally in Amsterdam, the other thing is going through Anne Frank's home. And one of our Jewish students wanted to tour it with me. And when we ended,
she needed a rock to help her get through it.
But we ended and we both saw the original diary, held on to each other and just cried. So that's what's special about AMA too, because it's just not the musical. It's the cultural, the history, what you're learning, but emotionally what you're sharing together.
Yeah.
Cathy and I, an experience we often say was we were blessed our lives, where we co-conducted the beautiful ward arrangement of America the Beautiful at Omaha Beach. And Cathy standing in front of the choir and me in front of the band, and those kids playing and singing out to 10,000 American graves. And we made a point of letting the kids know those young men buried out there are just a few years older than you kids are right now. Those boys were 19, 20, 21 years old. That was an overwhelming experience. You couldn't look at the music because your eyes were too wet. That was just something we will never forget. And to share that together was probably the most memorable conducting experience in my life. And I was fortunate to teach in a pretty good school system.
Yeah. Well, you guys are making me tear up. Come on.
We always in our orientation, made a big point of, I think AMA still uses the three mottos. One is it's a we tour and not a me tour. And that we is a big, long word that has two letters because it's not just, it's not about you. It's we the family, we the tour. And that was a big point. And the kids, they would say, what kind of a tour is it? And they'd all yell back, it's a we tour, not a me tour. And the second one was from the great basketball coach, Dean Smith from North Carolina. If you're on time, you're late. Because trying to move an entire entourage with like 2 busloads or 3 busloads of students and teachers, if we're going to leave at 8:30 and everybody arrives at 8:30, you're not out of there till 9:20, and you might miss an entrance to a gorgeous cathedral or a museum or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the third one from Mother Teresa was acceptance is the ultimate human quality. And we made a point, and I think that's the AMA way of doing it. We accept new culture. We accept new languages. We accept new traditions. We accept the differences in each other. There are Yankee fans on the tour. There are people that hate the Yankees. There's the Red Sox fans. There's White Sox fans.
Of course you would do a sports analogy. Oh my gosh.
Well, there's a lot of similarities in music and sports. Coaches and band and choir and orchestra directors have a lot in common. They need to mold a group of people to create a product. And it's not just 1 or 2 people, it's that whole group. So I think that's why I try to bring in the sports analogies.
I know.
Yeah. Why do you think the 3 C's are important? Can you remember what the 3 C's are?
That's 3 C's.
The 3 C's. Every tour includes a cathedral, a castle, and a concentration camp.
Oh, that's right.
That's right. Yes. And
why do you think those are important?
Oh, extremely. The concentration camp, my uncle was 19 years old. He was one of the liberators of Dachau. And till his dying days, when he left the earth, he never talked about it. It was an overwhelming experience for a 19-year-old kid to see that kind of devastation. And every time we left a concentration camp, it's the only time in my dealing with kids in 40 plus years in education that there was complete silence on the coach. They were overwhelmed with what they saw because one thing to read about it, one thing to hear about it, but to walk inside of Dachau or Buchenwald or Bergen-Belsen or Auschwitz or any of those horror chambers, the kids saw firsthand man's inhumanity to man.
mm-hmm.
So the 3 C's are great. And again, that's part of the recipe.
That's right.
AMA has kept the recipes. Bruce Reichert has kept the recipes that made the restaurant so good.
Yeah. And as a choir person, Cathy, I'm sure the cathedrals were a big part of what you looked forward to.
Absolutely. I was just going to say the students, when we walk out of there, I mean, they said, oh, I got chills singing there. Because for them to be able to hear that resonance and when we cut off and it just, it's indescribable. And their faces are so amazing to watch when they're singing, but especially as a cutoff and you just hear the reverberation. Yeah. And there's been many times, I'm sure a lot of choirs the same feeling. The minute you're singing, you can't help but have tears because you're so emotionally moved by the experience. So thank you for keeping that in.
It's interesting you just mentioned that. And part of the DVD that I watched today from 2011, it was Cathy conducting in the Cathedral of Salzburg, and she did a beautiful arrangement of half the choir is singing I Believe, and the other half is singing the Lord's Prayer, right? Ave Maria. Ave Maria. Ave Maria and I Believe combined at the same time, which worked musically and harmonically. And that was, I just got goosebumps watching it today. And then those kids, Patrice is now a music teacher in Ohio, yes. And she just had a child. So that 16-year-old is now 33.
Yeah. We hear so much about many of our people were part of AMA and they're happy to be back as directors. Ron, you are important to us because you are finding directors. What is it that you look for when you're looking for a director for AMA?
Well, they need to be certainly good musicians, but they don't have to be necessarily the best choir director in the world or the best orchestra director. They have to be competent, of course. That's a given. But I'm looking for people who are flexible because you need to be flexible when you travel. You can set up, I mean, everything is so organized and so planned and all the details are all in place, but things go wrong when you're traveling. A little problem with a bus or a problem with this or that, and the person needs to be flexible, and that's certainly I look forward to. And I also needs to be somebody who's organized. That's a key factor. So somebody that's going to follow through. And I think I think most of the people that I brought into the tours fit into that criteria. You know, sometimes you can't tell because somebody might seem excited about it, and I love that enthusiasm. I remember a choir director I had lunch with when I was judging in Suffolk County, and by the end of lunch, he had already called his wife and said he's okay, he's going. This was all done in an hour. And then I had such enthusiasm. I said, this kid, this guy, he was young, he was young 20s. He's going to be great. Enthusiasm.
Amen.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know I could pop in on that. I think that passion and enthusiasm first. Stamina. I mean, you need to have that also. Like you talk, flexibility, the organizational skills, leadership skills, the musical and personal. But for us, the top priority was relationship building. So you need to have that too, because you need to create that family atmosphere, especially when you're traveling all that time together.
How do you think the directors grow personally and professionally by being a director of AMA?
Well, it's one thing to conduct a wonderful concert here in Buffalo or in Washington or in Virginia or wherever the people are from. But it's another thing to conduct a concert with the Austrian Alps as a background. You can't beat that. Here in Buffalo, having the Black Rock Creek Canal in the background just doesn't have the same effect. When we played an arrangement of Sound of Music and you play Climb Every Mountain and the Alps are your background, your life is going to be changed by doing that. And I think just this making music in a foreign country to extremely appreciative audiences.
Yes.
That's another one of the great facets of AMA. The audiences are always appreciative. They vary in sizes. Some of them can be up to 200, 300. In the square in Leipzig, we know one of our accountants, one of the parents that went on the trip was an accountant, figured out there were over 2,000 people at that outdoor concert outside the church where Bach was the director. Now that's unusual. They had standard concerts there, and we happened to fit in one of the nights that they're used to concerts being there. But even if it was a crowd of 50, they were always consistently appreciative. We always said, and all the head directors have all said this too, that if you had enough music, we could keep doing encores to Thanksgiving because they kept clapping. They just loved it.
And even remember how during the rain, they would sit through concerts in the rain with all their umbrellas up.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing. I love how they support the arts.
That wouldn't happen here in the United States. If it started raining, everybody would go helter skelter. They did helter skelter just to get their umbrellas, and then they stayed there for the concert.
Yeah, that's great. What do you think the biggest difference between May 30 years ago and today is, besides cell phones?
Besides technology, yes.
Well, I think AMA is a little more difficult now because of the anxiety situations with kids today. And I know that's been addressed by trying to incorporate counselors and even some tours bringing in history teachers to make sure it's a totality experience and cover the needs that are necessary to cover. We dealt with that in a certain degree, but our last tour was 2012. That's the last time we went. So that's a lot of years. Of course, there was nothing during the COVID years.
Right.
Just to reconstruct everything after the COVID years was a monumental challenge, and you get a lot of credit for that.
You've worked hard at adapting and meeting the needs of the students, of the directors, even with students who have the special needs that might need to have a parent come along. I
Right.
mean, you provide that support.
Yeah. What's your favorite location on tour? Where's your favorite place to go?
I love Florence.
I love Salzburg because that's where Mozart was born. That's where you go to his home. That's where Herbert von Karajan, the great conductor, is buried, who conducted Dennis Brain, who I think is the greatest French horn player ever, and playing the Mozart four horn concertos. I always got a thrill out of that. And of course, you can't beat the Sound of Music effect. You know, one of the most famous Hollywood movies ever was filmed in and around Salzburg. And Cathy would get our entire entourage, the band, the choir, the orchestra, if we had an orchestra, the bus drivers, the escorts, the wonderful escorts that speak all these languages, and they would all sing Do a Deer on the steps with a Von Trapp family kid sing it. And that's a milestone memory for
That's
everybody.
the highlight for me.
But every tour
Skipping around the fountain.
has to have a Cathy that has the enthusiasm to get the kids up on that fountain and go around it.
Right. Yeah. I've seen it reenacted many a time.
I'm sure you have.
What else can I ask you?
Bruce, you know, the other thing that I wanted to share, that a highlight for me was I had an opportunity to conduct, to sing, and accompany the choir.
Oh, wow.
I love being able to, when I wasn't conducting, to be a part of the ensemble or a pianist, and the opportunity for students to be in band and choir. I think that's really important.
Right.
Bruce, I'd like to share with you just a sentence that a young lady who went, and I pulled this out because I watched the 2011 DVD today, at least one of the discs, and she went in 2011. She wrote, and I think she says it all in one little sentence. I remember going up in the cable car towards the glacier, and you said I looked like I was experiencing my first Christmas. Well, I think the experience was better than my first Christmas, better than my sweet 16, and better than the day I performed in Carnegie Hall combined. I now have some of the closest knit friends a girl could ever have. I could say I've hiked on an Alp, sang in a few cathedrals, and even walked the same floors as Mozart. I have grown so much as a person and as a musician, and it was a privilege to play and sing with everybody. Love and hugs, Kaylee.
That's great.
Isn't that perfect?
That's to me, that's a testament to AMA. And I had a young lady who went, and again in 2011. She and her family, her sister and her parents, went in 2012 also. And this girl was so vivacious. I brought her to the meeting we had in Clarence in October of 2011 for those that were going to go in 2012. And I said, Emily, in a few short words, explain to people what American music is all about. What do you say? And she said, it's just like Disney World, only 1,000 times better. I said, that's it.
That's perfect.
There you go. That's it.
And Bruce, we were both looking up at some quotes, some, expressions from the students. And here's another one. She said, the trip broke down into so many categories of amazing: the culture, the music, and the people. I have become a better musician and better able to understand music and the power it holds. I have a clearer and more mature image of the world in which we live through seeing all the cities, small villages, and the people in the countries we visited. Most importantly, I have come to know the concept of family. The tour was a life-changing experience.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
So,
I mean, I think that's why I've had this amazing enthusiasm myself for AMA throughout all these years since I got involved in 1996, because I see over and over and over what it does for people, for the teachers and for the kids. It's just an amazing experience. And to back up my comment, in my will, it says that donation, in lieu of flowers, donations could be made to American Music Abroad Scholarship Fund for needy kids that might not be able to have this experience to help them afford it. That's that's how I feel about AMA.
That's great. That's great. And well, you'll be happy to know that we are right in the midst of putting a scholarship fund together, and we have an organization that's going to back us.
Oh, that's
great.
wonderful.
I hope you don't get in my monies for a while yet.
Yeah, I hope we don't get your money for a long time.
I've got a great grandchild who's going to be born in a couple of weeks, and I got to see a little bit of growth in that child before I
There you go.
conduct in the sky.
Well, good. Well, good. Well, I think we've had a great interview here. And is there anything else you'd like to add before we close?
Yeah, I'd like to show you a picture. I'm not sure what philosopher, maybe it was Confucius, that said a picture is worth 1,000 words. Picture these two young ladies. They are 25 years old in this picture, but they met when they were 16 on AMA. They did not know each other. And they both were in each other's weddings. And this is the picture holding up how they met.
Can you see AMA?
I can. That's awesome. That is great.
That's wonderful, but talking to you, Bruce.
Thank you so much for this. This has been awesome. Although I have to say I've been tearing up 90% of the time. So
well, it's got to make you feel good.
Yes, makes me feel great. And I think, AMA's got a long life ahead of it. And people like you keep us going. We appreciate it.